Today we're going to dive into the aspects of Mercury. Now, when I focus on planet-to-planet combinations, I usually only focus on those combinations using the hard aspects, because within a Uranian astrology context, as well as a cosmobiological context, hard aspects correspond with the manifestation of concrete events. So while we're going through the aspects of Mercury, I want you to know that we're specifically going to be focusing on the hard aspect combinations between Mercury and the angles. Let's start with Mercury ascendant combinations. When we have Mercury in our charts in a conjunction with the ascendant, the ancients tell us that Mercury is essentially going to be in his terrestrial house of joy, because the first house, being the house of our soul and psyche, is also the house that corresponds with Mercury, which is representing our intelligence and the planet that most fully corresponds with our psychological makeup. Therefore, when we have Mercury conjunct the first house cusp, or in hard aspect to the ascendant, the ancients tell us that this allows a person to become very skillful with speech. The native has a very good ability to speak eloquently, whether that's through public speaking or debating or communicating in any way. When we have Mercury conjunct the ascendant, it also denotes that there's a foundational curiosity within that person that allows that person to come into the world and present themselves in a more mercurial way. And the reason for this is because any planet that we have rising within our first house, and especially the planets that we have conjunct our ascendant, are going to represent planets that serve as our calling card to the world within this lifetime. So when we have Mercury conjunct the ascendant, I can say that the person is a very intelligent and also very intellectual person. This is probably somebody who likes to pick things apart or see how the internal structure of things operate. When a person has Mercury conjunct the ascendant, it can denote that there is a very foundational native curiosity within that person that they appease through a life of constant studying, researching, learning, and communicating with the world around them about the things that they've learned. Mercury conjunct the ascendant is also going to represent somebody who moves through the world primarily through their mental faculty, which can sometimes cause a person to be very good at analysis, but not very good when it comes to the softer skills of feeling and connecting with people around them on an emotional level. This combination is something that we find within the charts of people who experience restlessness or a lot of nervous anxiety, because there's so much of them that's constellating around their mental faculties that sometimes it can be very difficult for them to turn their minds off. When we have Mercury conjunct the ascendant, one of the challenging things about this is when we're constantly picking apart the world around us intellectually, we can sometimes miss out on the fact that there are more things to cherish about the experiences that we're picking apart than the sum total of the components that actually create those experiences. So sometimes having Mercury conjunct the ascendant can make us far more quantitative thinkers, and it can cause us to be far less qualitative in terms of our appreciation of some of the less quantifiable things about our life experiences. The positives about having Mercury conjunct the ascendant is that Mercury, of all of the planets within traditional astrology, is the only planet that can truly multitask. Therefore, when we have Mercury conjunct the ascendant, it gives us a great level of organizational skills and abilities, and clearly this is going to be more so the truth if the Mercury isn't afflicted within the chart, but it denotes a greater level of organizational skills and abilities, and it allows that person to genuinely be able to do multiple things at the same time without having themselves completely destroyed by the contradiction that exists within the multiple things they're trying to accomplish. However, Mercury conjunct the ascendant just as easily can represent somebody who scatters themselves across multiple projects, and as a result of them constantly wanting to be inspired by things that are new and interesting, they can sometimes drop the ball on the projects that they're pursuing because they lose interest or because they get bored. Now, I've been speaking about Mercury if Mercury were conjunct the ascendant, but the same can be said about Mercury if Mercury is conjunct any of the angles at all. Whenever we have Mercury angular within our charts, it gives us a great level of mental agility, mental ability, and a fantastic mind by which to navigate our lives within this world. Now, traditionally speaking, within astrology, we tend to think of planets conjunct our midheaven as having a lot to do with the career path that we pursue within our lifetime. But the reason why this is the truth is because the planets conjunct our midheaven are going to be planets that have an overall impact on the larger unfolding of who we are and who we aspire to be within this lifetime. Because any planet that is the highest elevated planet within our birth chart is going to be a planet that is casting its rays, so to speak, over the entirety of our chart, and therefore over the entirety of our identity as well. So having Mercury conjunct the midheaven denotes that we are very intellectually gifted people who tend to learn a lot, read a lot, speak a lot, and think a lot. And as a result of that, we want to mobilize these thoughts, ideas, and learnings that we have within this lifetime with our words so that we can communicate these thoughts, ideas, and learnings towards other people around us. And that can lead us towards being in fields that are communicative, whether that is the field of mass communication or some other field in which we're communicating with the general public in a very large way. This is associated with journalism, as well as any sort of public speaking career. And having Mercury conjunct the midheaven can also be something that we find within the charts of teachers or lecturers or people who are disseminating information as their primary career function within this lifetime. One of the things about Mercury is that, as we know, Mercury was also the servant or the messenger of the gods. Therefore, having Mercury conjunct the midheaven can also say that we can be representatives of others or liaisons on behalf of others, or that we can be the in-between person to represent the opinions or to represent the needs of two parties. So having Mercury conjunct the midheaven, it allows us to be a wonderful go-between, especially if that's something that we're doing professionally. Now, Mercury is also a god that we associate with travel. And besides Mercury's association with education and learning, Mercury simply represents the fact that we probably don't want to stay in one place. We don't want to stay in one place intellectually, but we also don't want to stay in one place physically. So Mercury conjunct the midheaven could be a signature for people who are working in the travel industry, whether they're travel brokers, whether they're working on airplanes, whether they're doing anything at all that has to do with mobilizing themselves from point A to point C. Mercury conjunct the midheaven could be another thing that is signifying that as well. Mercury is also the god of dexterity, as well as the god of being ambidextrous. And as a result of that, the mercurial person is always wanting to do multiple things with their hands, but also multiple things with themselves within this lifetime. So while Mercury conjunct the midheaven can be a wonderful signature for somebody who's working in either the communicative or educational fields, it can also be a wonderful signature for somebody who, while maintaining whatever their primary job is in this lifetime, has many odd jobs as well that they feel inspired to pursue.